Well, friends, another major headache for the President of the United States, Donald Trump, and a potential opportunity for Ukraine. The Vitkoff tapes. A tremendous scandal is unfolding in the United States today, and it's escalating in a very serious way, not child's play at all. So, where does this all begin? This morning, a significant publication, I believe, from Bloomberg was released. And this major publication is devoted to the very tale of how the concepts for the peace plan first emerged, the identical plan that ultimately we all observed and have been earnestly discussing for the second week now. What are the Bloomberg researchers documenting? They've practically presented a transcript of telephone negotiations. It's currently unknown how it originated or from which social network or communication channel it was sourced. That particular aspect is still under investigation. There is some information suggesting what this could entail, but fundamentally, it is a detailed transcript of a telephone conversation between Sergei Ushakov, who serves as President Putin's assistant and advisor, and Stevie Vitkoff. This interaction forms a critical part of the unfolding events. This entire scenario is centered on the preparations for a significant telephone conversation between the leaders of the two countries, specifically Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin. On these tapes, or rather on this very recording, the transcript of which has been widely distributed, you are welcome to read it as well. I will specifically read a section of it for your benefit. This concerns Stevie Vitkoff, the very individual who traveled to Putin's location during the summer and who essentially facilitated the prospective meeting between Donald Trump and Putin, set to take place in Anchorage, Alaska. Stevie Vitkoff he's consulting. Yes, that's the term we'll employ. He's clearly consulting in a friendly manner, as terms like buddy, pal, and friend frequently appear throughout the conversation. Ushakov is offering counsel on the most effective manner to engage in conversation with Donald Trump, thereby ensuring that he remains entirely pleased and content. And it's not just about how to engage in conversation, but also about knowing precisely which compliments to offer and how to appropriately frame the Russian Federation and its various demands in a favorable manner. Wouldn't you agree? So, well, it's quite interesting. Take a look at this excerpt, for instance. Ushakov, I'll discuss this with my boss, and then I'll get right back to you. All right, Vitkoff. Yes, just heed what I'm saying. I just want you to convey this, perhaps for President Putin, to tell President Trump himself. You know, Steve and Yuri were actually discussing a remarkably similar 20-point peace plan. And this might not be what we had in mind, but it just might gently nudge the situation along. We, meaning the Russians, are receptive to such ideas. So this is Vitkoff consulting Yuri Ushakov to explore what is needed to make a peace deal. Now, between us, I know what it takes to make a peace deal. Donetsk and maybe a territory swap somewhere. But I'm saying, instead of talking like that, let's talk more optimistically, because I think we will reach an agreement. And I do believe, Yuri, the president will grant me abundant space and considerable liberty to finalize this agreement successfully. Friends, it spans several pages, but the core essence of this conversation is quite evident. Vitkoff behaves in a manner suggesting he's merely acting like Putin's lackey. And he's setting up conversations for Putin with Trump, so they proceed without issues, ensuring ample space and flexibility to reach an agreement, which in essence is about the betrayal of Ukraine, if that's how you wish to put it. And consequently, these deciphered documents caused a sensation, right? All these recently disclosed transcripts have now unleashed an immense, truly unbelievable wave of criticism. And you know, this happened even before anyone had a clear understanding of the source. Regarding this leak, the crucial question is from where Bloomberg actually obtained this recording. If it truly was a wiretap, that's one thing, and it quite clearly was a wiretap. Where did it come from? Or maybe, friends, it's just the FSB at work? So we're talking about artificial intelligence. Currently, there are numerous questions being raised, along with a significant amount of reactions. However, what's transpiring with all these reactions is quite a separate matter altogether. A veritable revolution and an uproar are practically igniting in Congress and the Senate, encompassing both Republicans and Democrats who are nearly uniformly demanding Vitkoff's dismissal. The word impeachment hasn't been uttered so far. This is just for a general understanding of the situation. So the primary focus of this review is to uncover the individual or group responsible for the leak of these controversial recordings, famously dubbed the Vitkoff tapes. And what was the true purpose behind all of this? Ushakov has already weighed in, expressing his views on the situation. So let's take a moment to hear what he had to say. What for?
Most likely to obstruct. It's improbable it was intended to improve relations. They're currently in the process of being established, a challenging endeavor indeed. This is being achieved through these types of contacts, including direct telephone conversations. Regarding Vitkoff, I can inform you that a preliminary agreement has indeed been reached for his visit to Moscow, scheduled for the upcoming week. He, along with several other administration representatives dealing with Ukrainian matters, were involved.
And this conversation, is it fake or did it truly unfold in this manner?
As I mentioned, I engage in discussions with Vitkoff quite frequently, but the nature of those conversations is strictly confidential, and I choose not to disclose details. Furthermore, no one, absolutely no one, should be providing any commentary on such matters, frankly.
Where did they get this information?
I don't know. Someone is killing and someone is eavesdropping, but not us.
Just a few points about this particular comment. If anyone thought, in the opinion of those who aren't Russian, that Stevie Vitkoff could be compromised in Moscow's eyes, that is clearly not the case. He is still anticipated in the Russian Federation, and they continue to expect the next stage of negotiations regarding the exploration of possible points for a peace plan. That's the first thing. Secondly, this recording, and evidently this entire conversation, is 90% likely to be authentic. At least that's Ushakov's comment. So many discussions are taking place. He also clarifies in the interview that the leak might be from WASAP, a WhatsApp story which both Great Britain and the Russian Federation have access to. And so the question emerges, could this recording perhaps have been made by the intelligence services of either the United States or Great Britain? So then what was the aim? Was it to discredit Vitkoff? In America, he's compromised. In Russia, he's not. For what reason would one want to compromise Vitkoff, specifically in the eyes of the citizens of the United States? This is if Vitkoff is indeed the individual involved and specifically tasked with the ongoing objective of achieving yet another conclusion to the military conflict in Europe. Such a resolution to hostilities would ultimately allow Trump to attain the highly sought-after so-called Nobel Peace Prize from the Nobel Committee. That's the second point. And the third point. At the beginning, Ushakov talks about why this might be happening. In order to spoil the relations that are being painstakingly built between Moscow and Washington. Well, that's a truly contentious statement to sour relations that in reality are non-existent. Thus, these events unfold at a specific level, yet, for example, the very same commentary, I'm omitting those particular excerpts, also explicitly mentions the unexpected arrival of a piano in the bushes, referring to the individual known as Driscoll. So obviously the Russian Federation doesn't like that a new person is joining the negotiating team. And it isn't Vitkoff who routinely journeys to meet Putin without any stenographers present, engages in private one-on-one discussions where the topics remain undisclosed, and then freely interprets the nature of his agreements with the Russians, all while continuously communicating with Ushakov, whether via WhatsApp or another messaging platform. This in itself is already quite peculiar, wouldn't you say? Peskov and Ushakov, the very same individuals, have already stated after this leak occurred that there are, in fact, no negotiations taking place. No one has sat down at the round table yet. And in general, nothing is happening at the level everyone expects. So top officials aren't discussing anything, and neither are second and third tier officials at the lower levels. This propagandist asks Ushakov, who from our side flew to Abu Dhabi? Narishkin? No, not Narishkin, it's a lower level. Special groups are at work, Ushakov states, resolving matters like prisoner exchanges, that's all. That's how the Russian Federation perceives it. And now for another notable point. Well, today, you know, some summits are currently taking place in Kyrgyzstan. Putin is there right now, and Lukashenko also traveled there. An interesting dialogue occurred. I will now present to you the conclusion of this discussion, which was intended for the press. This is Putin once more telling Lukashenko that in the United States, everyone comprehends perfectly well how to engage in dialogue with Moscow. This is truly an incredibly astonishing moment. Take a look.
Well, I truly hope that, given the most recent developments, everything will turn out all right in the end. If Americans conduct themselves, and I'll say publicly what I told them carefully, they will grasp this isn't simple and demands complex solutions. So
I think there is such an understanding, but we'll talk about that later. Indeed, such an understanding truly exists, doesn't it? So when Ushakov says, we await Vitkoff in Moscow, there's a clear understanding. Vitkoff is evidently the individual Moscow requires. And if these compromising recordings were to be leaked, Ushakov's public statement creates the impression that it wasn't us who orchestrated the leak. He denies it, saying, "It wasn't us." However, when you listen to Putin with his slight smirk remarking, "I sense such an understanding exists in the United States," a completely different impression arises, implying that it could very well have been the Russian Federation. So what exactly is the advantage for the Russian Federation in all of this? It's simply about, friends, gaining more time, literally. More time to postpone the inconvenient moment when they will inevitably have to agree to something, and to undertake all of this for the sake of some ephemeral promises that Trump might guarantee or might not guarantee. For instance, consider the return of certain Russian assets being discussed. Out of $300 billion, the United States is reportedly set to allocate $100 billion for collaborative initiatives with the Russian Federation aimed at rebuilding Ukraine's territory, supporting military operations, and so forth. And another question there is the lifting of sanctions. And it seems to me Putin states that in America, everyone truly understands everything. This represents a delaying tactic, especially if this particular recording was indeed produced by the Russians and subsequently disseminated by them onto the network. So what exactly was the outcome, for instance, and how could it potentially prove advantageous for the United States? A domestic political struggle, an activation of the so-called hawks or the hawkish wing within the Republican Party. Not the appeasement that Vance is engaged in, who completely misunderstands the context and suggests cultural exchanges between Kyiv and Moscow. You heard that comment. Not some sort of lenient liberal perspective coming from them. Secretary of State Rubio, who at one point appeared to be Vance's antagonist, though this is entirely untrue and he is refuting it today, actively engages with Europeans, collaborates with Ukrainians, and subsequently coordinates all matters with the Russians. And well, Ukraine, where does it fit into this? What is Ukraine's role in all of this? My viewpoint is, look, memes about this are already flying around today. Zelensky and Trump are talking. I know about the Mindich tapes, and Zelensky says, and I know about the Vitkoff tapes. For Ukraine, actually, there's quite a lot in this meme. There's a lot of significant meaning embedded in it, I believe. Perhaps someone intended it as a joke, but it genuinely wasn't amusing. Rather, it proved to be quite strategic and tactical, wouldn't you say? This is a pivotal moment, a tactical shift. Ukraine, in essence, is now back in the game. Amidst the unfolding scandal, Ukraine seizes an opportunity to achieve more significant gains. Indeed, any peace plan, regardless of whether it consists of 28, 19, or any other number of points, ultimately simplifies down to three fundamental issues that represent non-negotiable red lines. That is, Ukraine doesn't trade territories, it doesn't move its borders. This is Ukraine, which doesn't wish to relinquish the option of, for instance, amending its constitution regarding its potential entry into the North Atlantic Alliance. And it's precisely Ukraine which will never agree to any territorial concessions or reductions whatsoever of its military might, armaments, and other such related things. So, these are the sorts of matters at hand. And today presents an opportunity to address and settle this entire situation by placing the full responsibility squarely on Vitkoff, who began to get caught up in a scandal right from the moment of his visit to Moscow during the summer, at which point no one received any transcript of negotiations whatsoever. So essentially, it's a story that, in fact, has only been corroborated by Vitkoff himself. Such an individual should not be part of the negotiating team. I believe that should be Ukraine's stance. Driscoll is entering the scene, so let him manage things for the moment. This, as Ushakov put it, a piano in the bushes. We shall observe.